The headlights cut through the mountain darkness like twin blades, and that's when David Chen saw her, a massive brown bear, standing in the middle of the highway, her eyes gleaming gold in the light, her enormous body blocking both lanes. But she wasn't attacking. She wasn't threatening. She was begging. David slammed on the brakes, his rental car skidding to a halt just 15 feet from where she stood. His heart hammered against his ribs. He'd been driving for 6 hours straight, desperate to reach his brother's funeral before sunrise. And now this. A bear in the road. At 2 in the morning, on a stretch of Colorado highway so remote he hadn't seen another car in over an hour. He should have honked, should have reversed, should have done anything except what he did next, which was stare into those ancient intelligent eyes and realize with absolute certainty that this bear was trying to tell him something. She made a sound then, low and mournful, almost human in its desperation. Then she did something that made David's blood run cold. She turned her massive head toward the steep embankment on the right side of the road, looked back at David, and did it again. Turned, looked, turned, looked. "No way," David whispered to himself, his hands still gripping the steering wheel. "No way." But the bear wouldn't move. She planted herself there like a furry mountain, blocking his path completely, forcing him to acknowledge what she was showing him. And then he heard it faint, pitiful, barely audible over his idling engine, a crying sound, high-pitched and terrified. A cub. David's photographer instincts kicked in before his common sense could stop him. He grabbed his phone, turned on its flashlight, and stepped out of the car. The October air bit at his face instantly, sharp and clean and smelling of pine. The mother bear watched him but didn't charge. She didn't growl. She just stood there, waiting, as if she knew he would understand. "Okay," David said, his voice shaking. "Okay, I'm looking." He approached the embankment carefully, keeping one eye on the massive bear behind him. The flashlight beam swept down the rocky slope, past scraggly bushes and loose stones, until it found what he was looking for. About 20 feet down, wedged between 2 boulders, was a tiny brown cub, no bigger than a large cat. It was crying, its little paws scratching uselessly against the rocks that held it prisoner. "Jesus," David breathed. He looked back at the mother bear. She hadn't moved. She was still watching him with those unbearably intelligent eyes, and David realized with a jolt that she had chosen him. Out of all the cars that might have come down this highway, she had waited for him. She had trusted him. David had lost everything in the past year. His wife had left him, taking their daughter across the country. His photography career had collapsed after he'd refused to fabricate a story his editor demanded. And just 3 days ago, his older brother Marcus, his only real family, had wrapped his car around a telephone pole after drinking himself into oblivion. David was driving to a funeral for a man he'd stopped speaking to 5 years ago, carrying guilt so heavy he could barely breathe under its weight. And now a bear was asking him for help. I'm coming, he told her, though he didn't know if bears understood English or if he was losing his mind. I'm coming. The slope was treacherous, all loose gravel and hidden roots waiting to snap an ankle. David half climbed, half slid down toward the trapped cub. His phone clamped between his teeth, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly. The mother bear moved to the edge of the embankment above him, watching his progress with an intensity that should have terrified him, but somehow didn't. When he reached the cub, it tried to bite him, its tiny teeth clicking together with surprising force. David didn't blame it. The little thing was wedged tight between the boulders, one hind leg bent at an angle that made David wince. "Easy, buddy," David murmured, setting his phone down to free both hands. "I'm here to help. Your mum sent me." He braced his feet against the rocks and started to push at the boulder, trapping the cub's leg. It didn't budge. He tried again, throwing his whole body weight into it, his dress shoes slipping on the loose stones. Nothing. The boulder might as well have been part of the mountain itself. Above him, the mother bear made that mournful sound again, and David felt something crack open in his chest. He thought about Marcus, about all the times his brother had been trapped by his own demons, wedged between the boulder of his addiction and the hard place of his shame. David had tried to help. God knows he'd tried. But eventually, he'd stopped pushing. He'd stopped trying to move the unmovable thing. He'd walked away. And now Marcus was dead. "No," David said through gritted teeth, "not this time." He repositioned himself, finding better footing, and pushed again. His muscles screamed. His shoulders felt like they might separate from his body. But the boulder shifted, just an inch. Then, too, the cub squealed, and for a horrible moment David thought he'd made it worse. But then the little creature was free, scrambling out of the gap on 3 legs, the 4th one dangling uselessly. David scooped the cub up before it could tumble further down the slope. It fought him, claws catching in his jacket, tiny teeth seeking his hands, but David held on. He started climbing back up, cradling the injured animal against his chest with one arm, grabbing at roots and rocks with the other. It took forever. His lungs burned. His legs shook. But finally, he crested the embankment and set the cub down gently on the shoulder of the highway. The reunion should have been beautiful. The mother bear should have rushed to her baby, should have nuzzled it and led it safely into the woods. David had saved the day. He had done the good thing, the right thing, the thing he couldn't do for his brother. But that's not what happened. Instead, the mother bear looked at her cub, then looked at David, and something changed in those golden eyes. Something dark, something wrong. She took a step toward him, and another, her massive body lowering into a posture David recognized from every nature documentary he'd ever seen. The crouch before the attack. "Wait," David said, backing toward his car, his heart suddenly in his throat. "Wait. I helped you. I saved your baby." But the bear kept coming. The cub was crying behind her, trying to drag itself on 3 legs, and the mother bear was looking at David like he was a threat, like he was the enemy, like he had hurt her child instead of saving it. "No, no, no," David whispered, stumbling backward. His car was too far, the bear was too close, and he understood with perfect clarity that he had made a terrible mistake. That trust was a currency that could be spent in an instant. That no good deed goes unpunished in a world that doesn't care about intentions, only outcomes. The bear charged, David ran. He didn't make it 5 steps before something hit him from behind, not the bear. Something else, and the world exploded into confusion and pain and the sound of squealing tires. Another car. There had been another car coming down the highway, headlights off, moving fast. Too fast. And in his panic, in his desperate scramble to escape the bear that was supposed to be grateful, David had run directly into its path. The impact sent him spinning into darkness, and the last thing he saw before consciousness left him was the mother bear, standing over her cub, and a man stepping out of the vehicle that had hit him. A man David recognized. A man who shouldn't be there. A man who was supposed to be dead. His brother Marcus. David woke up to the smell of pine smoke and something cooking, something that made his stomach turn, despite the fact that he couldn't remember his last meal. His entire body was one massive bruise, but when he tried to move, he realized nothing was broken. Impossible. The car had hit him hard enough to send him flying. He should be dead, or at the very least, in pieces. He opened his eyes to find himself inside a small cabin, lying on a worn couch in front of a stone fireplace. The walls were rough-hewn logs, decorated with nothing except a few animal skulls and a faded map of Colorado. A single window showed darkness outside, though whether it was still the same night or another one entirely, David couldn't tell. And sitting in a chair across from him, very much alive, was Marcus. "You're awake," his brother said, as if David had simply dozed off during a movie instead of being run down on a highway by a dead man. "Good. We need to talk." David's mouth opened, but no sound came out. His brain couldn't process what his eyes were showing him. Marcus looked thinner than David remembered, his face haggard and lined with exhaustion, but it was definitely him. Same dark hair, same crooked nose from the fight in high school. Same scar above his left eyebrow from the time he'd crashed their father's truck. "You're supposed to be dead," David finally managed. "They called me 3 days ago. They said you wrapped your car around a pole." They said a lot of things," Marcus interrupted, standing up and walking to the window. "Most of them true. Some of them necessary lies. The funeral you were driving to, that's real enough. There's a body, there's a coffin, but it's not me inside it. Then who does it matter?" Marcus turned back to face him, and David saw something in his brother's eyes he'd never seen before. Fear. Deep, bone-chilling fear. "Listen to me very carefully, David. That bear you helped tonight, that was a test, and you passed. but passing means you're in this now, whether you want to be or not. David tried to sit up, winced at the pain that shot through his ribs, and managed it anyway. In what, Marcus? What the hell is going on? Why did you fake your death? And why are you up here in the middle of nowhere doing? He gestured vaguely. Whatever this is. Marcus paced the small cabin like a caged animal. 5 years ago, when you stopped talking to me, you thought you knew what I was. A drunk. A loser, a waste of potential, and you were right about all of that. But what you didn't know, what I couldn't tell you, was why. Because you were addicted. Because I was trying to forget what I'd seen, Marcus said, his voice sharp enough to cut. Because I'd stumbled onto something I wasn't supposed to know. And the alcohol was the only thing that made the nightmares stop long enough for me to sleep. David stared at his brother. Outside, something moved in the darkness, a large shape passing by the window. The mother bear, probably. Or maybe something worse. 3 years ago, Marcus continued, I was working as a wildlife photographer. You remember, you're the one who taught me. I was doing a spread on mountain ecosystems for National Geographic when I found something in these woods. Something that shouldn't exist. Marcus. I found a cave, his brother said, ignoring the interruption, about 10 miles north of here, and inside that cave, I found bones. Lots of them, but not animal bones, David. These were human men, women, children, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all arranged in patterns that made my skin crawl. And at the center of it all was something else. Something I couldn't photograph because every time I tried, my camera would die. Battery full 1 second, completely dead the next. David felt ice forming in his stomach. This sounded like the paranoid ramblings of a man who'd drunk himself into delusion. But Marcus seemed sober now. Painfully, terrifyingly sober. I ran, Marcus said, got out of those woods as fast as I could, and tried to pretend I'd never seen it. But that night, I had visitors. 3 men in suits who knew my name, knew where I lived, knew everything about me. They told me very politely that I had seen something classified, that if I told anyone about it, I would disappear. My friends would disappear. My family would disappear. You would disappear. That's insane, David whispered. Is it? Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. They let me go with a warning. Said they'd be watching. And they were. For 3 years, I felt eyes on me everywhere I went. Couldn't hold a job, couldn't maintain relationships, started drinking to cope with the paranoia. Except it wasn't paranoia, was it? They were really there. Marcus walked back to the fireplace and stared into the flames. Then, 2 months ago, I met someone, a ranger named Sarah Blackwood. She'd seen things too, different things, but just as impossible. We started comparing notes, and we realized something terrifying. Whatever is in that cave, it's been here for a very long time. And it's not alone. Marcus, please. The bears know, his brother said, turning to face him again. That's why that mother was on the road tonight. That's why she led you to her cub. The animals in these mountains, they're trying to warn us. They're trying to tell us something is coming. Something that's been asleep or dormant or just waiting. And now it's waking up. David stood on shaking legs. This is crazy. You're talking about conspiracy theories and monsters, and you just saw a bear beg for help, Marcus snapped. You saw her lead you to her injured cub like she understood exactly what she was doing, like she was intelligent in a way bears aren't supposed to be. Don't pretend that didn't happen. Don't pretend that was normal animal behavior. He was right. God help him. Marcus was right. That bear had been too deliberate, too purposeful, too ... aware. The cub, David said suddenly. Where is it? Is it okay? Marcus smiled, but it was a sad smile. That's what I liked about you, little brother. Even when the world is ending, you still care about the small things. He walked to a door David hadn't noticed before and opened it. She's fine. Come see. David followed him into a smaller room that had been converted into some kind of makeshift veterinary station. The cub was there, sedated and sleeping on a padded table, its injured leg wrapped in a professional splint. And standing next to it, checking the bandages with expert hands, was a woman David had never seen before. She was maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes that assessed David in a single glance. This had to be Sarah, the ranger Marcus had mentioned. He's awake, she said, not a question. And confused, Marcus replied, but he'll understand, eventually. He's smart enough. Smart enough for what? David demanded. Sarah straightened and met his eyes directly. Smart enough to know that we're all in danger. Smart enough to understand that your brother didn't fake his death for fun. He did it because it was the only way to keep investigating without them knowing. And smart enough to realize that by helping that bear tonight, you've marked yourself, marked myself, for what? For the same thing we're all marked for, Sarah said quietly. As someone who sees what they're not supposed to see, as someone who helps when they should run away, as someone who might actually be able to stop what's coming. Stop what? David was nearly shouting now. Will someone please tell me what the hell is actually happening? Marcus and Sarah exchanged a glance. Then Marcus walked to a laptop sitting on a cluttered desk in the corner and opened it. 3 days ago, he said, pulling up a series of photographs, Sarah went back to the cave. She wanted more evidence. Wanted to document what I'd found. But when she got there, the bones were gone. All of them. Cleaned out like they'd never existed. He clicked to another photo. This one showed the inside of the cave, now empty except for marks on the stone floor. But something new had appeared. These symbols, carved fresh into the rock. Sarah's a linguist, along with being a ranger. She recognized some of them. They're a warning, Sarah said, her voice tight. In multiple languages, some of them dead for thousands of years. All saying the same thing. The harvest is coming. David felt the world tilt sideways. The harvest, we think, Marcus said carefully, that whatever is in these mountains has been here for a very, very long time. And every so often, it takes people, lots of people. That's what the bones were previous harvests, and now it's time for another one. This is insane, David said again, but his voice lacked conviction. Is it? Sarah pulled out her phone and showed him something. A news article. Look at the missing persons reports in this region over the past month. 17 people gone without a trace. No bodies found. No evidence of foul play, just ... gone. And that's just what's been officially reported. Talk to the locals, and they'll tell you about dozens more. People who vanished, and nobody bothered to report because it happens too often up here. David looked at the article, then at the photos of the cave, then at his brother's haunted face. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Why bring me into this?" "Because I'm going to die," Marcus said simply. "For real this time. Sarah and I have maybe a week left, 2 if we're lucky. Whatever's in those woods, it knows we're investigating. It knows we're trying to warn people, and it's going to stop us." "How do you know?" Sarah held up her hand. In the dim light of the room, David could see something wrong with her palm. Dark lines, but spreading in patterns that looked almost deliberate, almost like writing. "It marks you first," she said. "Then it comes for you. I have maybe 5 days. Marcus has 3. David's stomach lurched. "There has to be something." "There is." Marcus interrupted. You're not marked yet. You're still clean, and you have something we don't have anymore. You have connections in the media. You have platforms. If we can gather enough evidence in the next few days, you can get the story out. You can warn people before the harvest really begins. And if I refuse, the silence that followed was answer enough. "It won't let you refuse," Sarah said finally. "By helping that bear, by showing compassion when most people would have driven on, you've demonstrated the exact quality it looks for, the exact quality it needs." "Needs for what?" Neither of them answered, and that's when David heard it, a sound from outside the cabin. Not the mother bear, not the wind, something else. Something that sounded almost like words, but in a language David didn't know, couldn't know, shouldn't know. Marcus went pale. Sarah's hand dropped to a gun David hadn't noticed she was carrying. "It's here," Marcus whispered. "It's found us already." The door to the cabin rattled on its hinges. The windows began to frost over despite the fire crackling in the hearth. And David heard his brother say one more thing before the lights went out and the screaming started. "I'm sorry, David. I'm so sorry. But you were always meant to be part of this." Then the door burst open, and David saw what was coming for them. But what made him cry wasn't the horror of what he saw. It was the realization that he recognized it. He'd been drawing it since he was 5 years old. The creature that came through the door wore his brother's face. Not perfectly, the proportions were wrong. The eyes too far apart. The mouth stretched just a fraction too wide, but close enough that for one terrible moment David thought he was seeing double. Two Marcuses, one standing next to him, gun forgotten in his hand, mouth open in a silent scream. The other stepping into the cabin with movements that were smooth and liquid and utterly wrong. "Hello, David," the thing said with Marcus's voice, except the words came out layered, harmonized with frequencies that made David's teeth ache. "We've been waiting for you to come home," Sarah fired. 3 shots. Center mass, exactly where you'd aim to stop a human threat. The bullets passed through the Marcus thing like it was made of smoke, embedding themselves in the doorframe behind it. The creature didn't even flinch. "Run!" the real Marcus screamed, grabbing David's arm and yanking him toward the back room where the cub lay sleeping. "The tunnel, go, go, go." But David couldn't move. He was frozen, staring at the impossible thing wearing his brother's face, and his mind was racing backward through time. To the drawings. God. The drawings? When he was 5, David had started drawing the same figure over and over. A tall man with 2 long arms and eyes that seemed to follow you no matter what angle you looked from. His mother had taken him to therapists. His father had burned the drawings, thinking they were demonic, but David kept making them, compulsively unable to stop, until one day, when he was 12, he just ... forgot. The compulsion vanished. The memories faded. The drawings went into a box in his parents' attic, and David moved on with his life. Except now he remembered. Now, staring at this thing that wasn't Marcus, he remembered all of it. And worse, he remembered that in every single drawing, the tall figure had been holding something. A child's hand. David's hand. "You know me," the creature said, tilting its stolen head in a gesture of curiosity. "You've always known me. I was there in your room when you were small. I taught you how to see past the veil, how to recognize the truth behind the masks. Why do you think you became a photographer, David? Why do you think you've always been able to see what others miss, David, move?" Marcus physically shoved him, breaking the spell. David stumbled backward into the room with the cub, and Sarah slammed the door behind them, throwing a heavy bolt. "The tunnel," she gasped, already moving to the far corner where David now saw a trapdoor hidden under a medical supply cabinet. "Marcus found it last week. Comes out a mile north. It's our only chance. What is that thing?" David's voice sounded hollow, even to his own ears. "We don't know," Marcus said, helping Sarah move the cabinet. "It's been calling itself different names. The shepherd, the harvester, the first teacher. It changes form, wears faces like you or I would wear clothes. Sarah and I think it's been here since before humans arrived in North America, maybe before humans existed at all." The door shuddered, the bolt held, but frost was spreading across its surface in patterns that looked sickeningly familiar. The same patterns from the cave, the same patterns on Sarah's palm. It's been preparing David his whole life, Sarah said, throwing open the trapdoor to reveal a narrow earthen tunnel descending into darkness. That's what the drawings were. That's why he was able to see the mother bear's plea tonight, when most people would have just seen a dangerous animal. It's been grooming him. For what? David demanded, even as Marcus grabbed the sedated cub and started down the ladder into the tunnel. We think ... double quotes, gun trained on the door as it began to splinter. We think it needs someone to witness, someone to record, someone to tell the story of what's about to happen so that others will know, will understand, will accept. Accept what? The door exploded inward in a shower of frozen splinters. The Marcus thing stood in the doorway, and behind it, David could see more shapes, human-shaped, but wrong. Some wearing faces he didn't recognize, others wearing faces he did. He saw his ex-wife, his daughter, his father who'd been dead for 10 years, all of them smiling with too many teeth. Accept their place in the cycle, the creature said, its stolen voice now coming from all the figures at once. Everything feeds on something else, David. Wolves eat deer, humans eat wolves. And we eat the stories. We eat the memories. We eat the love and the fear and the desperate hope that there's meaning in suffering. We harvest it all when the fruit is ripe. Sarah fired again, this time at the floor in front of the creatures, trying to buy time. David, go. Down the tunnel, now. But David was reaching for his phone, his photographer's instinct overriding his survival instinct. He started recording, started capturing footage of the impossible things standing in the cabin doorway. Yes, the creature hissed, and all its many faces smiled at once. Yes, show them. Show them what comes. Show them there's no escape, no hope. Only the harvest and the long dark after. David. Sarah grabbed him by the collar and physically threw him toward the tunnel. He fell, his phone flying from his hand, the video still recording as it skittered across the floor. He saw Sarah turn back to face the creatures, saw her raise her gun one more time. Saw the marks on her palm suddenly burst into black flame that didn't burn but consumed. Tell my daughter I tried, Sarah said, and then she charged. The creatures swarmed her. David didn't see what happened next because Marcus was pulling him down into the tunnel, yanking the trapdoor shut above them, and they were plunging into darkness with only the sound of the cub's frightened whimpering and Marcus's ragged breathing to prove they were still alive. They ran through the tunnel, stumbling over roots and loose stones. Marcus cradling the cub against his chest, David's hands bleeding from scraping against the earthen walls. The tunnel seemed to go on forever, twisting and turning, sloping down and then up, until David lost all sense of direction. Marcus, he gasped when they finally stopped to catch their breath in a slightly wider section of tunnel. Marcus, what Sarah said about you having 3 days, what did she mean? In the darkness, he heard his brother laugh. It was the saddest sound David had ever heard. Remember when I said I faked my death? Marcus asked. Yes. I lied. Part of me did die 3 days ago. The part that was going to fight this book, that thought we could win. He fumbled with something in the dark, and a moment later a flashlight clicked on, revealing his face. The marks on his forehead were unmistakable now, crawling down toward his eyes. I'm already being harvested, David, already being consumed. But in 3 days, there'll be nothing left of me but a shell for it to wear. David felt something break inside his chest. No, there has to be a way to stop it, to fight it. Marcus, you can't. I didn't bring you here to save me. Marcus interrupted gently. I brought you here because you re the only person I trust to finish what Sarah and I started. The evidence is all in the cabin. My laptop, her research. You need to go back and get it before the creatures destroy everything. Are you insane? I'm not going back there. You have to. Marcus set the cub down carefully and grabbed David's shoulders. Listen to me. Those things, they feed on stories. Yes, but stories can also destroy them. The right story. The true story. If enough people know, if enough people believe, the harvest can't happen. It needs secrecy. It needs isolation. It needs people to disappear quietly so no one asks questions. One video on my phone isn't going to convince anyone of anything. They'll say it's fake, CGI, a hoax. It's not just the video, Marcus said urgently. Sarah was documenting everything. She had physical evidence. Hair samples that came back as no known species. Photographs of the marks that appear on victims. Audio recordings of the language they speak. She even had a partial skull from the cave that carbon dated to before anatomically modern humans existed. Real evidence, David. The kind that can't be dismissed. Even if I get it, who's going to publish it? I'm a disgraced photographer, remember. I refused to fake a story and got blacklisted for it. No major outlet will touch anything I produce. Then you don't go to major outlets, Marcus said. You go everywhere. Social media, independent journalists, hell, conspiracy theorists if you have to. You flood the zone with the truth so completely that it can't be contained. That's what it fears most, exposure. David looked at his brother's marked face in the flashlight's glow and felt tears burning his eyes. Come with me. We'll go together. I can't. David, I'm already too far gone. If I leave these woods, I'll lead them straight to you. Straight to anyone you love. Marcus pulled him into a fierce hug. But you can still get out. You can still warn people. And maybe, just maybe, you can stop this from happening to anyone else when they broke apart. Marcus handed David the flashlight and something else, a small leather journal filled with Sarah's handwriting. Her notes, Marcus explained. Everything we learned Marcus, the tunnel keeps going north for another half-mile. Then there's an exit near Old Ridge Road. My truck is parked there, keys in the visor. Take it. Get to town. Upload everything you can before they realize you're gone. He turned to leave, back toward the cabin, toward certain death. Wait. David grabbed his arm. What about the cub? We can't just leave it down here. Marcus looked at the small, injured bear, still drowsy from sedation. That cub is why you're alive, David. Its mother marked you as someone worth saving, someone capable of compassion, even in dangerous circumstances. Take it with you. Get it to a wildlife rehabilitation center. Let it be a reminder that not everything in this world is cruel and hopeless. Then he was gone, jogging back through the tunnel toward the cabin, toward Sarah, toward the creatures that wore stolen faces. David wanted to follow Mo, wanted to fight beside his brother, wanted to do anything except what he was being asked to do. But Marcus was right. There was only one way to win this. Tell the story. David picked up the cub, tucked Sarah's journal inside his jacket, and continued north through the tunnel. Behind him, he heard something that might have been screaming, or might have been laughter, or might have been the sound of a soul being harvested. He didn't let himself look back. The tunnel exit was exactly where Marcus said it would be, hidden behind a collapsed section of old mineshaft. David emerged into the pre-dawn darkness, the cub whimpering against his chest, and found the truck right where it should be. He was putting the cub in the passenger seat, his hands shaking so badly he could barely function when he heard it. A voice from behind him, calm and pleasant, familiar and hello, David. He turned slowly, knowing what he would see before he saw it. The creature stood at the edge of the clearing, wearing Sarah's face now. She looked perfect, unmarked, whole, as if she'd never charged into a cabin full of monsters, as if she'd never burned from the inside out. Sarah told me to give you a message before she went into the dark, the creature said with her voice. She said, "Tell my daughter I tried." But here's the thing, David. Sarah doesn't have a daughter, never did. We checked. The world seemed to tilt. She lied to you. The thing wearing Sarah's face continued. Just like Marcus lied to you about so many things. Did you really think this was about stopping a harvest? Did you really think two broken people in the woods stumbled onto some ancient evil? I don't understand, David whispered. The creature smiled with Sarah's mouth. You will. Check the laptop, David. Read the files we made sure you'd find. Then ask yourself, who really set this all in motion? Who really brought you here? And why? It vanished between one blink and the next. David stood frozen in the clearing as dawn began to break over the mountains, the cub crying softly in the truck behind him, and realized with creeping horror that he didn't know anything at all. Not about Marcus, not about Sarah, not about why he was really here, but he was going to find out. He got in the truck and drove